Hello, freaks, geeks, degenerates, basement dwellers, and all you awesome scrufftards. Welcome to the Warzone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Skruffytalez. And oh boy, did a lot of stuff happen this weekend. Ukraine counterattacks in Kupiansk and at Pokrovsk and are attempting to cut Russian forces in half, trying to isolate and surround and cut off units of the Russian army. So let's take a look at Kupiansk and Pokrovsk. Right, good morning. We're gonna start off with Kupiansk and then head down to Pokrovsk because Ukraine is attempting several counterattacks that is cutting off Russian advances by the looks of it, or they're attempting to cut them off. So here we have Kupiansk zooming in. You can see here how Ukraine has tried to push in towards Hulubivka and the river to isolate the Russians within Kupiansk itself. They have, this is according to ISW, reclaimed Moskovka and Subilivka, and they are also pushing into Kindrashivka once again, pushing the Russians back and trying to reach Hulubivka. It's a bit unclear how effective this push has been, but the attempt is there clearly, and we'll see if they will keep pushing troops into this gap to complete the push towards the river here to isolate the troops within Kupiansk. A daring, bold move. I know people have been talking about it in the comment section that they've been waiting for this to happen. And now it seems as if the Ukrainians have managed to pool their resources and launch this attack. We can also see that Ukraine is back in control of some territory down here. We know Russia has made a push along this valley here towards Kirillivka. We see this on other maps as well. There are also rumors that Ukraine might be abandoning this pocket. And it's not that strange, to be honest. There are only a couple of bridges across the river. Russia's blown up most of them. And the only bridge still intact is this one here right in Kupiansk. And as you can imagine, it's not all that reliable with the Russians so close. So Ukraine might have issues reinforcing and supplying the troops here. So if they do fall back, I think that would make sense. I kind of expected it to happen when Russia began pushing into Kupiansk. Because, well, it is a Russian victory. There's no way around it. Russia made a move on Kupiansk, and that move might force Ukraine to abandon a section of the front line and retreat, allowing Russia to gain territory, right? So clearly, on the operational level, a Russian victory. There's no other way to spin it, right? So no silly nonsense in the comments. Russia made the move against the last remaining bridge, and this might force Ukraine to abandon this part of the battlefield. An operational victory for Russia of scale. But that doesn't mean it's a strategic victory, because Ukraine might solidify their positions strategically by making a operational withdrawal. So defending out here is more than likely a lot more difficult than defending a river, right? So they abandon territory that is difficult to defend and solidifying their defensive line along a river that is much more easy to defend with few crossing points. It demands a lot more effort for the Russians to getting across. If they do get across, it's easier to counterattack and cut them off at the bridgehead and stuff like that. And also, falling back from this pocket might or will allow Ukraine to focus troops, resources, and what have you at Kupiansk. Maybe this push here, and isolating the Russians and securing Kupiansk and what have you. So you see what I'm getting at? Even the Vatniks, you have to agree that yes, it is an operational victory if it happens, but strategically it might actually strengthen Ukraine's positions in the area, right? We all agree? I think that makes sense. But we'll see what happens here, if there's any truth to it. But I mean, you take a look at here. If the Russians manage to push to the river here, then you have two smaller pockets, and I think it's reasonable to assume that Ukraine will abandon this pocket actually to strengthen the hold around the Oskil and reclaiming Kupiansk. Not unthinkable. We'll see how this goes here, if they manage to reach Holubivka and isolate Kupiansk, and if they can start grinding down Russians in the city as a consequence. That's Kupiansk. Now we're going to head down to Pokrovsk. Right, so jumping down to Pokrovsk, we can see Ukraine has had some successes here north of it. They're pushing back around the Bonniers, the breakthrough operation, the Shakhove pocket here. Kacherev Yar is isolated, is liberated. We're using Andrew Perpetua's map here, and they're pushing in from the west here, Novoshakhove, deeper into previously held Russian positions. And they're also expanding up here on the high ground, securing the logistics leading into Shakhove, or so you might think, because other mappers are actually showing a different story. But they're expanding up here, up on the high ground. And they took this small community. Remember a day or two ago, or whenever it was, we made a video about Ukraine pushing up to the north of it and south. And we said it's only a matter of time before Ukraine is going to push into this community, and now it has happened. So the Russians are having issues here, but as we will see, other mappers have indicated that Russia has pushed in here into Shakhove, since we seem to have some Ukrainian airstrikes and drone strikes over here in this part of town. So Russia is being pushed from the north and in the west, and that might be a reason why they're pushing into Shakhove out of desperation to try and break out of this pocket, trying to reach these bridges to flee. That would be my guess. They're being heavily pressured north and to the north and to the west, and they need to reach these bridges to escape. So they're pushing into Shakhove, trying to reach the bridges to escape this deadly pocket that they found themselves in. But now to the big news. To the south, north of Rodinske, we can see here Ukraine has made a big push into Suketske, into Zatuzhok, all the way over to Fedorivka. And that means they are right next to the river. And we have essentially created two more pockets here. A Boykivka pocket, and reducing the size of the Rodinske pocket to being down here instead. A big move by Ukraine that isolates the Russians further and will allow Ukrainians to apply even more pressure on these smaller pockets. As you can see here, though, Russia is within Rodinske. They've been trying to push in for a couple of days now. Pro-Russian sources claim that the entirety of Rodinske is under Russian control, but as we can see here, Ukraine is fighting back and are in control of at least half of the town here. But the Russians, they are pushing in, absolutely, and they've made some gains, but Rodinske is still holding. And as Rodinske is holding, Ukraine is pushing strongly here, straight through Russian lines, heading for the river to isolate troops up in the Boykivka pocket. And we can see here they are pushing towards Myrnohrad here in the south. We'll take a look at that on my map later on. This is interesting. Not much else is happening here in Pokrovsk. The situation seems to be the same. But take a look at this. Remember, I think it was a week ago or something when we talked about the Russians being here in Novopavlivka. And we expected them to come up here towards Nativka and advancing to the east of this main street towards Piri, and come up here and securing this part of town. Take a look what the Russians are doing now. Shelling Nativka like crazy, preparing for this push like we expected, this flanking move to come up to the east of Pokrovsk, outflanking the high-rise buildings here that are a nuisance for the Russians. They can't get past them, so they're going to try and outflank them. And they're shelling Nativka as a consequence, trying to pave the way for assault forces that are more than likely going to push north in a day or two, would be my guess. And we're jumping over to my map. We're starting out with the northern part here, Shakhove pocket, where the Ukrainians have pushed into the small community. They keep pushing the Russians back. We see Ukraine pushing in here on top of the hill, forcing the Russians back further still. But here is the interesting part. We're seeing Ukraine striking targets in this part of Shakhove. And we have seen Russia previously moving down this part of the valley here. I'm curious if the Russians aren't in this area as well. Seems likely that they would be here, doesn't it? I'm thinking that might actually be the case, that the Russians are in complete control of this particular hill here. And they have moved downhill into town, desperately trying to outrun the Ukrainians coming in from the north and from the west. And they want to reach the 4 bridges in Shakhove to get across the river, or maybe a secure in Shakhove so more Russians can come in across the river and support them. I think this is a move of desperation from the Russians trapped in the pocket. They are trying to evade capture, evade getting killed. So they are pushing as heavily as they can down from this hill into Shakhove, trying to reach the bridges. I think that's what's going on. And I mean, you can't blame them. They're in a shitty position. They need to get out somehow. They can't push south. They can't push west. Their only hope is going through Shakhove. And it's a desperate attack that could work if everyone in the pocket just moves on Shakhove. It could very well work. So we'll see how that plays out. Moving down south, of course, the push through Suketske, Satushok, Fedorivka. And here you have the river. Let's take a look on the topography map here. Here you can see, here's the river, and you have the Ukrainians not far off. And the Boykivka pocket is effectively isolated. Not sure if Russia is in control of Boykivka. Might be. I might have forgotten to highlight this as a different color than Ukrainian. But as you can see here, you clearly have Russians isolated north of this push in what I call the Boykivka pocket. And south of it, you have the Rodinske pocket that is now significantly smaller as a consequence, and kind of jammed in between Myrnohrad, Rodinske, and the push here to Fedorivka towards the river here. So the question is, will this push here affect the Rodinske assault? I think it will. As you can see, Russia doesn't have all that many options in moving. They're gonna be crossing at Razine, and there's a small bridge down here. I'll show you it. You all seen the photos of the Russian vehicles getting trapped here in Pankivka outside of, I think it's this bridge, right? This is where they end up getting stuck in this marshy river, and they can't cross this destroyed bridge. So that allows you to get a feel for what this marshy river looks like and what it is, what an obstacle it actually is. And that river is the issue here around Razine, where the Russians need to cross to assault Rodinske. And the only viable option they have in getting across is this small thing. Take a look at that small crossing point. And as you can see, all the tracks, it has been well used by the Russians in the past couple of months here. So this is where the Russians can get across relatively safely. With vehicles without getting stuck in the marshes, and I mean, Ukraine will more than likely try and secure this area with drones and mortars and artillery. So I think that should affect the Rodinske push. They might come up through Novoekonomichne. What you got? I mean, you got the waterways here as well, as you can see, with a few bridges and crossing points. Here's another crossing point, right? So the Russians don't have all that many options in reinforcing their troops at Rodinske and this northern push into Myrnohrad. So I think this should affect the Rodinske push as well. I think the Russians are going to try and secure their flanks. That's going to relieve pressure on Rodinske. Russia's going to allocate troops to the north here and fight up here instead of focusing everything pushing into Rodinske. Moving over to Myrnohrad. So that's the nice push by Ukraine the other day here, creating a lot of issues for the Russians. And down on Myrnohrad, the assault continues. Russia is trying to come through the slag heap into the northeastern part of town. Russia has moved in. I think this is a tactical pig farm, and that they have managed to push in and secure north of town, putting them close to the main supply line here. And this intersection here is of interest, because this is where the road from Ryshine comes in, the vital supply line. Reaches here in an intersection and then moves south into Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad. And the Russians are trying to reach this vital intersection right here. There are other options for the Ukrainians. They can come through Ryshny here and moving into the northern suburbs of Pokrovsk. So just because Russia reaches this intersection, that doesn't mean Pokrovsk is isolated or anything. It does narrow the options for Myrnohrad, but yeah, I mean, you can still move through Rivne and Svitle to reach Myrnohrad with troops and reinforcements. So the Russians are trying this, and they're coming through the slag heap. They are also pushing through Balahan. We've seen Ukrainian strikes down here. I might have to update and edit this map so that Russia actually has taken all of Balahan and are trying to push into Myrnohrad. But we also have, interestingly enough, Ukrainian strikes against this industrial location here, right, a mine or something right next to this massive slag heap. So we have Russians here as well. I think these might be survivors from the mechanized assault south of Promin into Myrnohrad. So I think that actually gives us a nice indication of what the Russians had planned there. Hang on, with coming as they were coming down. What the hell? I want that one. Sorry. So coming down from the north and making this mechanized assault and coming up towards the factory. So I think this was a pincer move by the Russians, and seems to be semi-effective. Not sure if these are just stragglers, survivors, or if Russia did manage to push through with their forces and establish a presence. So we might be seeing maybe a effective Russian assault here in the eastern parts of Myrnohrad. But there's more to it though, because even if they do secure the southern part here with no small feat, I mean, take a look at this. You have high-rise buildings here, and then you have to move up through this narrow choke point in the city before you reach the northern half of Myrnohrad. So the question is, if Russia takes the southern part, can they push through here and reach the rest of the city? Seeing how problematic this part probably will be to advance through, right? We'll see how it all plays out. But if they do manage to, like we just pointed out here, if they do manage to come in from the north and moving on Svitle and Rivne, then Myrnohrad is effectively isolated, and then they might stand a chance. So yeah, lots of things happening here in Myrnohrad. We might have to accept that Balahan is fallen and Russia is striking out from Balahan proper into Myrnohrad. Moving over to Pokrovsk, not much is happening. We still have infiltration units here, saturation units causing havoc. The latest news is that it's roughly 200 Russians operating within Pokrovsk, spread out in these smaller units, doing raids, ambushes, calling in artillery, calling in drones, being a nuisance. But Pokrovsk is not under Russian control. They are operating in this part of town, being more than likely resupplied from the south, and Russians are trying to push in from the parks here to link up with all these various saturation units to establish a foothold, but it seems to be slow going. What they are struggling with, as we've pointed out before, is the high-rise belt that they need to figure out what to do, how to deal with it. They've been trying to come around to the north here, as we talked about in the previous video, and now we're seeing something that we talked about a week ago when Russia moved first up into Novopavlivka, like we said when we watched Andrew's map just a moment ago. in this part of town, Nativka, Russia is shelling like crazy, trying to open up a pathway for troops to come up from the south and to the east to bypass the fortress belt. Like we talked about a week ago when Russia first moved into Novopavlivka. And here we are, Nativka being shelled, and the Russians more than likely have troops ready to push up along the railroad into Nativka and coming up behind the high-rise belt here within Pokrovsk. So, again, like we pointed out in the previous video, Ukraine needs to aggressively push down here to secure the flanks at Nativka, and also coming in to securing the flanks up here north of the high-rise belt to deny Russia a chance to moving in behind the Ukrainians with saturation units and deny Russia a chance to saturate this area. Because if they do, then Ukraine obviously stands very little chance of moving reinforcements through this area to reach the high-rise belt. Because, and that's the whole point of the saturation units, right? If they do build up a presence, Ukraine can't move through with reinforcements and supplies because they're going to get ambushed all over the place continuously at every corner, at every street. And it's just going to be hell on earth to try and supply the troops in the high-rise belt. So that's the whole point of the saturation tactics. We've talked about this, that you saturate an area, and that allows the Russians to ambush Ukrainian reinforcements, Ukrainian logistics, and then as troops begin to move through the front line, they can over time link up with these saturation units and establish a proper presence in some part of town. Fortify and then rinse and repeat until you have the entire settlement. We'll see how that goes. The Ukrainians seems to be doing a great job over here, since the Russians haven't actually secured anything yet. It's just one massive gray zone. But we're seeing intentions of the Russians wanting to move behind the high-rise belt here, especially through Nativka. But that's essentially it at the moment with Kupiansk and Pokrovsk. And Ukraine is counterattacking and going for broke and trying to cut off Russians, isolate pockets of resistance, and more than likely trying to do so before winter sets in, so that these pockets of Russians will suffer from hunger and what have you, and from cold during the winter months, being isolated, and drones will not be able to supply them enough with everything they need during the cold winter months. So yeah, that's gonna have to be it. We'll see what the maps update during the day. And that's it for this time around. I hope I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.